Hey, okay, so if you watched my Putin video, you know that I stated that I didn't know much about anything political that's been going on, and I'm going to do my research afterwards. So I have done some research. I would consider it minimal research since then. So I want to revisit that and tie everything together, because all the Wednesdays for the next month, I believe, they're all pre-recorded videos. They're videos on celebrities, and they're videos on me revisiting the old ones that I haven't released. This is me just paraphrasing. What I'll be saying in those videos is essentially it was just taking up way too much time and memory on my computer and my hard drives. So I just condensed it all by kind of just, I told you the majority of what I picked up, and I'm sure with, that me continuously recording videos, more of it will come back up, and I'll be able to talk about those as well when it's relevant and if it comes up in my memory. Just a couple things to touch on with regards to those videos that I actually don't believe that I mentioned, I'm not sure, is a lot of the visions that I've had, I feel like they are, like there's a significance to the number 4, and I think Native American culture has a lot of information with regards to what that means. It would just be tied into their particular culture, but you could relate that back to Christianity and other religions as to how that makes sense and how that represents things that are existing beyond this reality and since the beginning of time. A couple other things is what's currently happening is a race towards essentially the end of humanity in some ways. It's because I've talked about this time of awakening, this massive awakening that's happening. I believe this has a lot to do with astronomy and the planetary alignments and why we are going through this massive upgrade. There's a lot of higher frequency souls, so angelic beings or elevated beings that have reincarnated into the world over the past couple centuries possibly, or decades, in order to assist in enlightening everyone. And also the way that everything is aligned, it's somehow thinning the veil between the other realities and the other realms. And it would be similar to what's represented in Greek mythology, but it's not exactly the same. My belief from my visions is that during Greek mythology, that is relatively accurate in the sense that that was before evolution of the souls had taken place as much as it has now. There's a lot of interbreeding between other species. It would be like alien species. And some of the majority of the demigods that were represented in ancient Greek mythology are demons, and they existed in different realms. But again, and then all the interbreeding that was involved in that. And so what's happening now with this awakening, which was already known to a lot of these astronomers and occultists, is that in order to counteract that, because we are waking up to our origins and who we really are in God, then in order to intercept that, much like they did during Greek mythology, during ancient Greece, where they were bringing in these, like, it's just like temptations, right? Sinful temptations. So they're bringing in those things and distractions in order to isolate people, in order for people to use their free will to go against what their soul is telling them to. So that's why there's mass depression, this disease that's spread, you know, that's calculated spread, so poisoning. It's a way to cull the population, to disrupt our minds, and for us to seek out ways of escapism and readily accept like an easier out. You know, it's like we're under so much pressure and stress that is calculated and created by entities, demonic entities that exist in this plane. So if you've watched any of my previous videos where I talk about psychopaths and sociopaths and how they share a separate DNA, that's essentially what's going on here, is that they're trying to awaken that part of other people and massively lower the frequency of the world so that these entities can continue to thrive and exist here. And that's why I talk about in these pre-recorded videos all of this, and I mention how it's a span of what I saw of around 300 years total, where essentially we're going to be mechanically hooked up, like our minds are going to be hooked up. That's the transhuman agenda, which has started with the trans, and we're going to we dropped trans, like we're introducing the word trans. We're introducing unidentified, like not identifying ourselves by our gender. It's stripping us from all of these labels, and then it's going to turn into the transhuman. And it's essentially us mentally being hooked up to a system that is similar to the metaverse, and we're basically just enslaved people. 2023 is a very important year. I feel like it's somewhere around 2020. I'm sorry, not 2023, 2030 to 2035, but they're trying to reduce it down to 2028. So 2028, maybe even 2027 at this point, is going to be major years for us that they are trying to introduce earlier than 2030 to 2035. Okay, so that's what I see there. To go back to what's happening in Russia and Ukraine and everything that I talked about in the Vladimir Putin video. So essentially what I'm seeing is, morally and ethically speaking, I feel that Putin and Trump were on the same wavelength with regards to that. I think they have high morality, and they want a country, and they respect a country that is independent and that it is truly world leaders and that lead with God first. That's what America represents, but I don't feel that that's truly what's happening, right? And it's a very young country compared to the majority of the countries around anyway. And so China and Russia agree and they get along as far as their perceptions of control, okay, and also leadership. So that's where they agree. But as far as human rights go, as far as religion and how the dictatorship, you know, because Russia is communist, so they don't agree on that. And I don't feel that Putin respects countries similar to that are very oppressive and violent in that way, because it's doing nothing for the soul. And so what I see, let's go into the United States, is Russia and China. Everyone politically is aware of this, and I'm not even bringing India into this, but India plays not a similar role, but a small role in this to a varying degree. But there are a lot of countries that are inserting themselves into the United States of America, and they're growing themselves. They're bringing in agents, they're bringing in companies, they're buying the land in order to not only profit from here, but also to control here. So they're working from the inside in order to basically implode or explode, I guess, but they're trying to control this country. And I mean, that's not outrageous anyway. That's not, I mean, I don't think it takes a psychic to know this, because obviously, like, even people who are minorities who have come over here, like, they do the same thing, or gangsters and stuff from other places, they do the same thing. So, just smaller scale, right? So anyway, what is happening with NATO is this has been planned for a very long time. And because what I just mentioned with China, I mentioned this in the other video, I believe, that China essentially controls the United States and other countries, surrounding countries. Now, if Ukraine joined NATO, then that is not only an ultimate betrayal of the original agreement between Russia and NATO, the northern states or countries, but it's also insinuating to him that this is done by China. Ultimately, China will overtake and overpower Russia, which he does not want to have happen, obviously. And that is pointing towards him that he would be beyond backed in a corner, which is what what's happened to him now. He's been backed into a corner, and now he's barking back, and everyone's pointing at the person that's been bullied this entire time as the aggressor, when he has been patient this entire time. He's been more than patient this entire time. With regards to Ukraine, I don't feel that he wanted this to happen at all. Number one, because he doesn't want this overtake of China to happen at all. Because China wants that one world government. China wants that. That is indicating everything that I mentioned in my upcoming videos of conquering humanity. It's a demonic thing. And that would be a step towards the demonic side overtaking. Again, you'll see, and if you watch the Putin video, it'll probably make more sense, hopefully. But that's one indicator there. There's a lot of things also that is happening behind the scenes in Ukraine. What I'm gathering that is not being mentioned. And I don't feel that Putin respects the presidency or whatever it is that exists in Ukraine. And there's a feeling it's a feeling that Ukraine is very similar to the United States of America currently. So the way that I would put this is, how I'm seeing everything is China is blackened out and it's thick like that. That's China. And that's represented as being very closed off, energetically closed off, very demonic. This isn't the Chinese people, it's the Communist Party and controlling the Chinese and brainwashing the Chinese to have that perception that they should continue that legacy of like controlling the world, because that is their perception, is at all costs be as successful as you can and overtake in the name of China. All right. And then the way that I see Russia is it's thick, the same, it's thick, but it feels very solid and structured and light. And I feel like Putin, like I said in his video, it's very rare that I see this in politicians. It's extremely rare, because it just is. And obviously that's not to say that he's a perfect angel, but his intentions, I do believe, are pure, irregardless of how he got into the position that he's in now and the things that he has done. Because I do feel there is a sense from him that he already has blood on his hands, so why push that onto other people or allow that on other people? It is a two-part of, I feel like I can keep this country safe and I want to leave this world a better place if at all possible, and I want to protect Russia as much as possible and build them up as much as possible, and like a strong nation. And on another hand, and I think that I'm the best person that can do that. And then on another hand, I already have so much blood on my hands. I've done so much to get into this position. I know what it takes. And so why allow someone, while I'm currently still alive and capable, to have to go through this when I know that it's very troublesome, and you have to kind of shake hands with some really dark things and dark people. You know, you should know your enemy. You should be close to your enemies, because your enemy is doing that. They're watching you, they're stalking you, they're learning you, right? Just I've talked about, like with the churches, like they're in your churches. They want to know you through and through so they can emulate you, right? Because psychopaths can only copy. And so they're doing their best to know you. So that's kind of what I see here. And I do see there's also that similarity that he sees within Trump, in the sense that they played the game and stayed pure within themselves, and they receive a lot of backlash and a lot of lies thrown at them, because it's calculated because it's controlled, right? Politics is the same thing as Hollywood and Washington are one and the same. They're controlled by the same people. It's just and overall it's just entertainment all around. And so you have to kind of play the game in order to get in. Otherwise you'll never be able to. You'll very rarely, I'm not going to say you'll never, you'll very rarely. And I think we're also coming up towards a time where there are more good people entering into the political sphere that weren't able to stay pure. So there's very strong-willed people that are trying, and so hopefully we'll see something happens. But anyway, so that's what I see with Russia. And then with Ukraine and the US are very, very similar. I see them as thin, where it's like they share the same principles in theory as Russia, but they don't apply it. So the systems within it are controlled by other countries. Ultimately, the United States is China owned and China backed. And I feel like the Ukraine is like US owned and US backed, which in turn is China owned and China backed. So for Ukraine to join NATO would be a direct slap in the face to Russia that China is doing this, you know, like you have no chance at that point. So he has to stand his ground. And then there's something going on within Ukraine, is what I feel, with the people that are similar to China. It's like enslaved. They feel enslaved, whether they realize it or not. The United States, I don't feel like we feel enslaved. I feel like we're extremely brainwashed. Extremely brainwashed. And that is where Putin does not agree. He agrees in the theory of how the United States is, but he doesn't agree in the execution of it. And it's because of the politicians that are in office now. That's something that he got along again with Trump, is because they had the same moral code, the same value system. The issue with Trump, obviously, is this campaign against him that's similar here. It's a campaign against him where I think a lot of good people probably fall victim to this false campaign because they're overworked and overtired and over-manipulated, where they don't have the authority or the time to research what's really going on, because the environment that has been created by the people in place of an office doesn't allow people to do their own diligence. So they have to look to trusted sources, and the trusted sources are skewed. They're run by the same people, right? And so, and another issue is because Trump, I feel, he has that loud, boisterous personality, which is extremely entertaining, and it works for his personality, but that also attracts people who are not of the same intelligence, that are loud and boisterous, and it misrepresents the people. Just like I feel like there are good people who are follow some of the same things that are during the current administration, but they're not as loud as the other people that are like screechy or whatever, you know, with regards to that. Okay, so that's what I see going on with that. Now, this I feel was completely planned. I think, well, I know this was planned because that was part of my research, that he's been trying to speak with NATO for many years now with regards to this. Now, the thing is that I feel that the attack on Russia, NATO and Russia, happened as they were planning this life-altering disease. I think that it was at the same time because it causes massive confusion, and we're talking about America, and worldly. It causes massive confusion and information overload, and they're already culling the people because there's a lot of disease and dying and all of these issues that are happening currently. And so as they're doing this, then they can pick and choose between all different kinds of dramas as to what people pay attention to. So that while it's just a distraction, it's a distraction method, so they can interchange in order to just do what they need to do behind the scenes. And that's what I think this is, because I think they were both planned. I told you guys before, I believe it was in my global predictions video, that I feel like there was a part of me that predicted this in some ways. It was mostly predicting the perception, and at that time, even though I was doing things to prepare for it, I wasn't necessarily taking it seriously. And the things I was preparing for, as I said in that video, is different things like toilet paper, like not just masks, but the gear, like certain kinds of gear, and vitamins and stuff, just random stuff, canning, all that. And so it was the perception that people had, right? That's not necessarily the truth of things. And so I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure why that is. I haven't really given it too much thought since then, but that's what I see going on, is that this is it's a disinformation and a distraction campaign, multiple things. And it's interesting because I feel like this is a great example of how evil has a one-track mind, and they're unintelligent. Evil is very, very unintelligent. There's no intelligence involved at all. And they don't have, I just feel like people time and time again underestimate Putin. I think they vastly underestimate him. And I think this is backfiring in a lot of ways, because it's going to wake people up. And I think this is part of his plan, is that him pushing back towards Ukraine at this particular time is not only because of necessity, whether it's necessity because this is the time that he has to do it and he has to make do of his threats, not only because of, whatever kind of economic factors were affecting the timing of him invading, but also because he's fully aware he's thinking several steps ahead. And I believe that there are going to be plenty of intelligent people who are going to be looking at the media and wondering why the reactions are the way that they are, what's truly going on, and what's happening here. And the awakening of people realizing, because I believe that it's not just researchers that are discovering that this is lab created. I don't believe it's just researchers now. I think that the companies that came out with ways to solve this have blatantly admitted that it is lab created. Don't quote me on that. I'll look into that. But I believe that's finally been released. I'm not sure though. And then it's basically what he's banking on is it's going to hopefully strengthen the United States in some ways, because I do feel that he is a well-intentioned individual. I really do. Maybe the way he goes about it isn't the best way. I'm never pro-war in any situation. I wish there were better ways for us to solve disagreements. I really do. I think it's disgusting and horrible. However, I do believe that he wants the good for everyone. I believe that he wants America to wake up to what's happening and form a stronger country that we're proud of and that can work with Russia. Because ultimately, I think there is a part of him that also wants control over well, obviously, because what I said with Russia and China trying to come into the US. But he needs and he wants to be on our side, because we are very big and very powerful in our own way, right? And so he needs us to wake up and join in. And I do remember during the Trump administration, because they were getting along, there was like some sort of Russian collusion rumor going around, which was, that's not true. I think that's been proven. But everyone knows that that's not true. Like everyone anyway, people do know that. But it's just for entertainment, right? Like what's released to the public. for the most part, it's like, anyway, so that's basically what I see that's going on here. Is he's banking and it's backfiring on them, because this is going to wake people up, hopefully, out of their own states of brainwashing and realize what's going on and take a proper stance on things and resolve within the country, hopefully. There needs to be some major changes within the United States, and he's aware of this, and this is kind of his own plan here with Ukraine, with the US, with himself, because protecting, in some ways, protecting or strengthening the US will strengthen and protect Russia. And by doing that, then he can also insert himself, at least, even if he doesn't overtake the United States. I don't know if he would even really care to do that. I have no idea. I don't think he does, but I think that he would like to be majorly, like, major friendly, like very friendly with the United States as far as like trading goes. And I do feel that us pushing back on Russia, all of this, is not only the distraction technique, but it's also for us to push for war against Russia and invoke this whole thing with NATO, with China, all of this. And they want war, right? Evil wants war. They want chaos. I don't know what the divine, you know, what's really happening here as far as like is this meant to be, you know? Is this our free will? What is this? So I'm pulling some Oracle cards just to kind of I do feel like I think that this is actually, again, because he's working, as I've said, from light, and it's gonna pay off, hopefully. Hopefully this is gonna pay off. It always does. It's just how that will come about, you know. How many more people have to be injured before it actually pays off, kind of thing. And what do? You know, we have to peacefully do something, right? And it kind of reminds me of that quote, isn't it, by, I think it's the I Have a Dream speech, where Martin Luther King Jr., he says, like, dark cannot drive out dark, only light can do that. That's kind of what it reminds me of, where we have to do something peacefully. I saw grounding again. So I just pulled these with no particular anything. But we shall see. So here's the thing, in that Putin video, I talked about Washington crossing the Delaware, and I don't know if this is mentioned in historical text. I assume that it would be, but basically what I saw is that Washington, there was a spy, there was a who are they working? It was British, right? They're against the British monarchy. They were to be free, right? It was a Revolutionary War. And there was a spy that was on the ship. He was with them before, and then on the boat or ship, whatever. It was a boat, and then after. And the way that I envision him is like kind of like writing in a journal, kind of like that. That's what that's not a journal, that's their legs, but that's what it reminded me of, writing in their journal. And the full story of that, and this is just like my interpretation of it, because obviously the way that I view the Revolutionary War and the Founding Fathers and the Declaration, all of this, I perceive it in a different way, which I've mentioned it over time, but I think they're in the upcoming videos. I'm not sure. They're somewhere. But basically, what the truth is with this British spy is that this spy was working with Great Britain beyond the monarchy. It's someone beyond the monarchy who controlled the monarchy. And they were working to make sure that Washington was doing what he said he was going to do. So he wasn't he was British, but my belief is that George Washington, like, this was all implanted in order to have a free society. To appear as if it's a free society, in order to manipulate the public into thinking that we were free from Britain, when in reality we were not. We were actually operating with these open borders and for Britain, with all the money was still being generated for Britain, essentially. So that's my conspiracy with that. Where it backfired, as it always does for evil intentions, is that it did develop a strong sense of independence, the true American independence. And that's where the true patriots stood. And they needed these patriots to fight for what became the United States, right? And so that's kind of what we're still seeing today, is the attempt of dismantling the United States, because that was the original plan to begin with. But because there's so many patriotic people who are still hanging on to those beliefs, it's very difficult to do that. So that's why they're implementing all of these different things in order to harm us. And even if they did have a nuclear attack on us, don't you think that these people who are saying, oh, we don't care, let's start a fight, let's, start a war with Russia or whatever, like, let's attack them first, don't you think that they're going to be safe? So who's really the victims here? Of course they're going to say that. Just like with Washington or these other generals, they stay safe for the most part, right? They send their soldiers out. Maybe not Washington. Washington could have gotten killed and all that. But anyway, so this spy was working to make sure that Washington was truly following through with this, and reporting back. Does that make sense? I think it does. And so there's an indication here with Putin as well of something very similar to that. And I think that Putin's aware of this, but to what degree, I do not know. I think again, people overplay themselves. They're way too confident, and really underestimate him. Especially because I think that he's well-rounded. He's not a narrow-minded kind of guy. He takes all different kinds of perspectives in order to generate his own opinion, his own belief, and what actions he's going to take. And so there's not really anything that you can do that he hasn't already thought about, or that he hasn't already used or considered himself. And so, yeah, I feel like it's similar but different, because essentially it seems like there's someone within his camp that is working against him. to some capacity, but I'm not quite sure what. Like an example would be like a Ukrainian that believes in whatever the Ukrainian system is working within him, or a Chinese working within his system, or an American working, you know, stuff like that. So yeah, I feel like you know, I don't know. I think everything is kind of up in the air as far as what's going to happen. I think that he's going to stand his ground. That's the most important thing. However, there's going to be the recommendation, and I think he's really going to follow through with this irregardless, because I think that he's a highly spiritual person, is that he should renegotiate and take a step back and find, like I said in the other video, the poison within the message. Like there's a poison in the message, and so I think that poison has something to do with someone that isn't supposed to be there, right? And so something being passed to him or being instigated towards him, something, okay? And this can be taken interpretive. That doesn't have to be exact what I'm saying. So these are just different hypotheses, but that's essentially what's going on here, is that it's kind of like go back to the drawing board and so far so good type of thing. As long as you just don't take it further, because it's not something that you wanted to do anyway, right? And you don't want to fight dark with dark, because that's not possible. That's not your point. That's not what you wanted to do. You just felt like that was your only way to do it. And I think this is also a message towards the Ukrainians of what he's doing. Like, it's in a way of trying to help these people. It feels like they're being enslaved. It feels like they're enslaved. It really does. And it feels compartmentalized. So it's like, it's a very interesting vibe that I'm getting for the Ukrainians. That he wants to help them. It's like he wants to help everyone. But at the same time, his priority is still his country. It's like, I want everyone to be helped, but by no means are you ever going to push us around. That's not going to happen. I don't care. You know, I'll do what I have to do, but I don't want to do it because I don't feel like that's the right. I don't feel like it's right. It doesn't fall in line with my beliefs, but I'm not a pushover either. I'll take that karma kind of thing. I wonder what this emergence is about. Let's look at these cards. Karma, drop your shields. Pillar of light. Which just seems, I was noticing it kind of, I would be very surprised if there was a nuclear attack, but I don't put it past. Just because I am being drawn to like different expressions of explosions. Here, here. I mean, it kind of feels that way, right? Let me see. I think currently it's still up in the air because he's giving people the opportunity to back down and do what's right, or even for people to stand up, right? Stand up against those in power, to not do this. We have that ability, right? And not let people dictate the ending of us, because that's essentially what they're doing. I think ultimately, to be honest, it seems like ultimately he's just gonna go with his gut. Like, he's just gonna go with what he... It's not really gonna be a what is it? Like, kind of like a calculated move. It's more of like an intuitive move. Because I feel like his intuition is he's so calculated and intelligent that any sort of intuitive move is already deeply calculated, you know, on a subconscious level. It's already been that way. So just trying to see if I can get, and this is something that I'm always seeing too, like, see how I'll show you how it's constantly repeated. That bright light here, and then even here, it's behind her head. It's above her head, behind her head. And then I'm also being drawn, I don't know how, on the hand, and it's kind of like pushing a button, right? Pushing the button here. It's kind of interesting. So let's just see. See what I mean? Maybe it's just me looking for those, but it looks like the volcano is exploding in the background, but okay. So I think this whole situation is meant to be. I do. Because, well, I don't know if it's necessarily meant to be, like if this is just something written in time. I mean, possibly, maybe everything's written in time, I don't know. But, it's like, because of the things that have happened, like for however long this dictates, maybe like 50 years or so, it is come up to this point. Like that's the karma. Like that's the this is what's being set forth because of actions from our elders. Now, what I feel is this is bringing us into a position, this is spiritually speaking, all of this is spiritually speaking, but it's bringing us into a position where we are left with the choice of where we want to go with this. It's bringing us to our own crossroads of where do we align ourselves. Do we align ourselves with strong morality, or do we align ourselves with loose morality? Like, it's black and white. And I feel like that's truly, like, the judgment, it reminds me, and I think originally the card has something to do with it, but I'm not entirely sure, has to do with, like, Judgment Day, right? So it's like when Gabriel sounds his trumpet and he calls in, you know, the people from the dead or something like that and brings them to heaven. Or maybe this is like maybe it's the coming of Christ and he's supposed to, like, bring in people, the saved people or something. So I think we're living in biblical times. I really do. I think for everything that I say and everything that I see, this is a very significant time for humanity. And this I know it seems a little different because I'm in the States and this whole thing happening, but I know this is occurring in so many other different countries, and there's a lot of crazy wars that are happening in other places. And so we need big countries such as this, and Australia and Canada, which are all having their own issues currently, to rise up and make choices, make the right choices, hopefully, in order for the betterment of everyone, because of everything and I said at the beginning of this video. And the only way to do that is, number one, patience with ourselves and patient with other people. It's in truth being Christ-like, in the sense that you are redeemable, right? You do have the opportunity to change. You don't rub it in people's faces if they decide to change their mind, or, you know, if they come to you for advice, or they say something, or you find information out, you know, that verifies something that you've been preaching. You don't point in people's faces like, see, I was right. It's not about that. That's not what's important. In fact, that's more of a deterrent. And so we have to help each other. We have to help each other. That's what I'm seeing here. We have to help each other realize what's going on. We need to speak up and step out of our own boxes and do something about it, right? I think in some ways that currently Putin feels defeated. He doesn't feel defeated as far as, like, this goes. I think that he's confident in his abilities, but it's a defeated feeling with regards to the spirit of others, right? The resurgence in people of a strong moral system, moral code, and truly becoming enlightened, not just awakened. And what I feel for him is that, and this is with regards to everyone too, is that this is about purification. It's purifying. So all of these tumultuous times that are happening now, dictated by people in varying degrees, it's going to stimulate this emergence. That's what it's going to do. It's going to bring forth a lot of pain in some ways, but with that pain, it's going to bring in that purifying, like a purifying rain, you know. And that's what it is. It's purifying. So that's what I see. And this is the last message for everyone that I pulled, which is to follow the voice of your soul. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.